There are some places people should stay far, far away from, no matter how daring they are. Queimada Island is one of them. Also known as Snake Island, this hell on Earth seems to exist solely to prove to us that no matter what horrors humans can come up with in movies, nature always has something far worse in store for us. Join us as we explore one of the most dangerous islands in the world and explain to you why nobody in their right mind would ever step foot here. The island is located 90 miles off the Sao Paulo coast, and at first glance, it blends in perfectly with all the other beautiful landscapes in Brazil. It seems to have everything: beaches, mountainous terrain, and even a small portion of a rainforest. In another universe, it could have been the perfect island resort. Don't be fooled by its beauty though, because it might be the last thing you do. Once you find out about everything that lives here, you'll be glad it's so far away from the mainland, and that the whole island is a snake den of epic proportions, and anyone foolish enough to wander onto its shores has a horrible fate in store for them. According to local legend, a fisherman who landed on the island in search of bananas was found 4 days later in his boat, dead in a pool of blood with snake bites on his body. People did live on the island from 1909 to the 1920s to run its lighthouse, but according to another local tale, the last lighthouse keeper, along with his 3 kids, died when a group of snakes slithered into his home through the windows. According to the legend, the wife tried to get away, but the snakes were waiting in the trees to attack her before she could get to the boat. Today, the lighthouse is managed exclusively by the Navy, which serves to protect both the snakes and the humans from each other. These rumors are probably false. After all, the snakes forming a coordinated assault on humans seems very unlikely, even if they're the smartest snakes in the world. But when you hear about everything you'll find on the island, some of these tales don't seem that far-fetched. For one thing, there are more cockroaches than you can ever imagine. If you ever decided to camp on the island, you'd be feeling them moving underneath you when you lie down. When you walk, you'll constantly hear the crunch under your feet. Bad enough yet? It only gets worse from here on. If you have a fear of snakes, you better steer clear because this island is overrun by them. One of the species found here is the sauvage snail eater, whose diet is pretty self-explanatory. These non-venomous snakes are probably the best thing on the island, which is saying something about the other species of snakes here. The true ruler of the island is the golden lancehead viper, which grows up to 20 inches in adulthood, not a size most people would be very comfortable with. The lancehead genus is responsible for 90% of death by snake bites in Brazil. Scientists estimate about 2,000 and 4,000 of the species inhabit the island, but you just need to run into one of them because a single bite will kill you in under 1 hour, giving you just enough time to regret ever having heard the name Queimada Island. The snake's venom can cause kidney failure, necrosis of muscular tissue, brain hemorrhage, and intestinal bleeding if you ever get bitten. Even if you're rushed to the hospital immediately, it's still not guaranteed to save you. Of course, you probably won't be able to cross the 90-mile distance in an hour. So the best thing you might do is just say your prayers if you find yourself here. With about 1 snake per square meter inhabiting the island, the odds of all this happening are almost 100%, and that's assuming you don't wander towards the forest, where the snakes thrive high up in the trees. Here, it's estimated that you can find about 5 snakes per square meter. Some terrified people have come up with stories to explain the number of snakes. One common folklore says that they were intentionally placed here by pirates who wanted to guard their treasures. Coming back to the world of science, though, it's a lot more likely that when the island separated from the mainland Brazil due to rising sea levels, the vipers were left without any predators, and the population just grew unchecked. Of course, this also provided a new dilemma. The rest of the genus preys on mammals, but there aren't any mammals inhabiting the island. So how on earth did the vipers survive without cannibalizing each other? The answer is simple. They prey on migrating birds. Many species of birds go over the island during migration, and when they go underneath the canopy for shelter from the frequent rains, the snakes are almost guaranteed their fair share of flesh. On an island where almost nothing else lives, and the native birds have grown way too clever to get caught by the jaws of the snake, the population of the unsuspecting birds is the only thing sustaining the snakes. The island isn't a very good visiting point for birds either, it seems, but the golden lancehead must be quick. Usually, snakes will bite their prey, wait for the venom to act, then track it down once incapacitated. Since the viper is unable to track or follow the bird it preys on, it evolves its venom to be able to kill animals and melt human flesh in an instant. Turns out, the threat of going hungry is a good incentive to have more and more dangerous children, because even with all these adaptations, the snakes sometimes go up to 6 months without eating. You thought you had it bad, and it's only getting worse from here. The population has been on a steady decline due to deforestation from back when humans initially landed on the island. The lack of trees has wrecked both the habitat of the snakes as well as their primary food supply. Without trees, not as many birds are likely to stop by the island. The vipers have become one of the most critically endangered species on the planet. In the last 15 years, the snake population has decreased by over 50%. Turns out that no matter how scary the snakes are for humans, we're always the bigger threat, especially when you consider the poachers. These so-called biopirates trap the snakes and sell them on the black market. A single golden lancehead can sell from anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 because of the medicinal properties of the venom, which we'll get into in a moment. Of course, selling these snakes or their venom is practically printing a target on your back because of how strictly the island is regulated, but that's never stopped the criminals. At this point, the Navy stops practically everyone from even visiting the island. To preserve the species and because of the danger, the Brazilian government strictly controls visits to the island. You'll just have to look for other legends about pirate treasures. Access is available only to the Brazilian Navy and selected researchers approved by the Chico Mendes Institute for Biodiversity Conservation. Of course, with snakes and trees overhead and huge cockroaches swarming around everywhere, the island probably wouldn't be on a lot of people's bucket lists, even if there wasn't a government ban. The travel experience was accurately summarized by a Vice team who visited the island. Don't ever go. The only visitors allowed on the island are biologists and researchers who are granted special permission to visit the island to study the golden lanceheads. Scientists hope that by studying the medicinal properties of the venom, which we mentioned earlier, they'll be able to find an antidote for bites of members of the whole lancehead genus. And that's not even the full extent of how great the golden lancehead's venom can be. It has already showed promise in helping with heart disease, circulation, and blood clots. But all of this is threatened by the possible extinction of the species. Hopefully, we'll be able to see the research through and protect the snakes that produce them. Queimada Island is one of the most dangerous places on the face of the earth. It's overrun by one of the most venomous snakes in the world, a single bite of which can kill you in under 1 minute. But the population of the vipers is decreasing every day, to the point where they have been classified as critically endangered. Who knows if Snake Island will have that name a few decades from now. This might be great news for anyone who hates snakes, but not so great news for the snakes themselves.